The stranger at her door had eyes like winter frost and a smile that could have meant salvation or ruin, and Amelia Wright didn't have the luxury of time to figure out which. She'd driven 17 hours straight with her daughter asleep in the back seat, crossing state lines like they were lifelines, putting distance between herself and Derek's rage. The bruises on her ribs still ached with every breath, hidden beneath her sweater where 3-year-old Sophie wouldn't see and ask questions Amelia couldn't bear to answer. The apartment she'd rented sight unseen was supposed to be empty, a fresh start in a city where Derek would never think to look. Instead, there was a man standing in her doorway, tall and impossibly pale, dressed in clothes that looked expensive enough to cost more than her car. "Miss Wright," he said, and his voice was like velvet over steel. "I've been waiting for you." Amelia's hand tightened on Sophie's, her daughter stirring against her hip. The hallway behind her stretched empty, the building silent in that particular way that made her skin crawl. She'd learned to trust her instincts over the past 5 years, learned that when something felt wrong, it usually was. But she'd also learned that running wasn't always an option, not when you had nowhere left to go. "I think you have the wrong person," she said, keeping her voice steady despite the fear crawling up her spine. "This is my apartment. I have the lease." The man tilted his head, studying her with an intensity that made her feel exposed. His hair was white, not gray like an old man's, but pure white, like fresh snow, falling past his shoulders in a way that should have looked ridiculous but somehow didn't. His skin was porcelain pale, almost luminescent in the dim hallway light. "The lease is a courtesy," he said. "This building, like most in this district, belongs to my family. When your application came across my desk, I took a personal interest." He stepped aside, gesturing into the apartment. "Please, you've had a long journey. Your daughter needs rest." Amelia didn't move. "Who are you?" "My name is Grigor Salvatore," he said, and something about the way he said it made it sound like a title rather than a name. "I'm here to ensure your safety, Miss Wright, though I suspect you have questions about why a stranger would make such a claim." Sophie whimpered, pressing closer to Amelia's leg. The little girl had been so brave through everything, too brave for someone who should still believe the world was kind. Amelia looked past Grigor into the apartment beyond. It was furnished, she realized, with furniture that looked antique and expensive, nothing like the sparse setup she'd been promised. "I can't afford this," she said quietly. "Whatever this is, I can't pay for it." "I'm not asking you to." Grigor's expression softened slightly, though his eyes remained sharp, watchful. "I'm asking you to come inside, let your daughter sleep, and allow me to explain. If you want to leave afterward, I won't stop you. But I think you'll find that what I'm offering is exactly what you need." Every instinct screamed at her to run, to grab Sophie and get back in the car and keep driving until she found somewhere, anywhere else. But Sophie was exhausted, and Amelia's body ached in ways that went beyond physical pain. She'd been running for so long, and she was so tired. "If you try anything," she said, meeting Grigor's gaze directly, "I'll fight, I'll scream, I'll do whatever it takes." Something flickered in his eyes, something that might have been approval. "I would expect nothing less, but I give you my word, Miss Wright, that you and your daughter are safe with me, safer than you've been in a very long time." She didn't believe in fairy tales or saviors. She believed in locked doors and emergency exits and always having a plan. But she also believed in taking chances when there were no other options left, so she lifted Sophie into her arms and walked past Grigor Salvatore into the apartment that was somehow hers and not hers at the same time. The interior was beautiful, in a way that felt out of place in the building's modest exterior. Dark wood furniture, velvet curtains, artwork that looked like it belonged in museums. A hallway led to what she assumed were bedrooms, and through another doorway she could see a kitchen with marble countertops. "The master bedroom is prepared for you and your daughter," Grigor said, closing the door behind them with a soft click. "There's clothing in the closet, various sizes, food in the kitchen. Anything else you need, you have only to ask." Amelia set Sophie down but kept hold of her hand. "Why? Why would you do any of this for a stranger?" Grigor moved to the window, pulling the curtain aside to look out at the street below. The late afternoon sun slanted through the glass, and Amelia noticed how he stood just outside its reach in the shadow cast by the curtain's edge. "Because I know what it's like to flee from monsters. he said quietly, and because I have the means to help, which creates an obligation. He turned back to her, and in the dimmer light, his features seemed sharper, almost otherworldly. Your ex-husband is a dangerous man, Miss Wright. His violence isn't random. It's calculated, possessive. Men like him don't stop simply because their victims disappear. They hunt. Ice flooded through Amelia's veins. How do you know about Derek? I make it my business to know things. Grigor's expression hardened, particularly when someone attempts to rent property under my family's protection while running from an abuser. Your background check raised flags. I investigated. What I found made me decide to intervene personally. That's insane. Amelia pulled Sophie closer, her daughter's small body warm against her side. You don't know me. You can't just decide to insert yourself into my life because you ran a background check. Can I? There was something ancient in Grigor's eyes, something that made Amelia's breath catch. I'm offering you protection, Miss Wright. Real protection, the kind that local police and restraining orders cannot provide. Your ex-husband works in law enforcement. He has connections, resources, friends who will look the other way. You know this. It's why you ran so far, why you changed your name on the lease application, why you paid in cash and requested no credit check. He was right, and that terrified her more than anything else. She'd done all of that, taken every precaution she could think of, and he'd still found out. If Grigor could uncover her secret so easily, how long before Derek did the same? What do you want from me? She whispered. Grigor crossed the room in 3 long strides, moving with a fluid grace that seemed unnatural. He stopped just outside her personal space, close enough that she could see his eyes weren't just pale, but had hints of silver in them, like moonlight on water. I want you to accept my protection, he said. I want you to let me keep you and your daughter safe. And in return, all I ask is that you trust me, and that you don't ask questions you're not ready to hear the answers to. That's not how trust works. Isn't it? A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Trust is accepting help even when you don't understand all the reasons behind it. Trust is believing that someone can want to protect you without expecting something terrible in return. Amelia wanted to argue, but Sophie was tugging on her hand, looking up with tired eyes. Mama, I'm sleepy. The fight drained out of her. She was too exhausted for this, too worn down by fear and Miles and the constant weight of keeping them both safe. Maybe Grigor was telling the truth. Maybe he was dangerous. Either way, Sophie needed rest, and Amelia needed time to think. We'll stay tonight, she said finally. Tomorrow we'll talk about this properly. If I don't like what I hear, we leave. No arguments. Grigor inclined his head in a gesture that seemed oddly formal. As you wish. I'll return tomorrow evening. Until then, this apartment is yours. The door locks from the inside and no one will disturb you. He moved toward the door, and Amelia found herself speaking before she could stop herself. Why evening? Why not morning? Grigor paused, his hand on the doorknob, his back to her. Because I have obligations during the day that cannot be avoided. Evening will have to suffice. There was something in the way he said it, some careful phrasing that tickled at the edge of Amelia's awareness. But Sophie was pulling her toward the hallway, and Grigor was already opening the door. And then he was gone, and they were alone in this strange, beautiful apartment that felt like stepping into someone else's life. The bedroom was as luxurious as the rest of the place, with a massive bed draped in silk sheets and blackout curtains covering the windows. Amelia helped Sophie out of her travel-stained clothes and into the pajamas they'd packed, then tucked her daughter into bed and lay down beside her. She meant to stay awake, to think through everything that had happened, but exhaustion pulled her under like a tide. She woke to darkness and the sound of her daughter's soft breathing. The clock on the nightstand read 3 a.m. Her body ached less than before, the rest having done her good, but her mind was racing now with all the questions she hadn't asked. Who was Grigor Salvatore really? How had he known so much about her? What did he really want? And beneath all of that, a more unsettling question. Why had his touch, when he'd stood close to her, felt cold? Amelia slipped out of bed carefully, making sure not to wake Sophie, and padded into the living room. The apartment was silent. the kind of deep quiet that made her think the whole building might be empty. She went to the window and looked out at the street below. This part of the city seemed older than where they'd driven through on the way in. The buildings made of stone and brick with architectural details that spoke of another era. The furniture around her, she realized now that she looked closely, wasn't just expensive. It was genuinely antique, the kind of pieces that belonged in museums or estate sales. The paintings on the walls were originals. She'd bet her life on it. Oils on canvas with signatures she couldn't quite make out in the darkness. She found herself drawn to a bookshelf along one wall, running her fingers over leather spines. The books were old, some in languages she didn't recognize. One caught her eye, thicker than the others, with gold lettering that read, "The History and Properties of Immortal Bloodlines." Amelia pulled it down carefully, opening to a random page. The text was dense, academic, discussing something about hereditary traits and transformation protocols. She flipped to another section and found illustrations, anatomical drawings that showed fangs extending from human mouths, eyes changing color, bodies shifting in ways that shouldn't be possible. Her hands started shaking. She closed the book quickly, shoving it back on the shelf like it had burned her. This was insane. It had to be some kind of elaborate fiction, maybe research for a novel or a game. People didn't actually believe in vampires. They were stories, myths, Hollywood monsters. But Grigor's pale skin, his cold touch, the way he'd avoided the sunlight, his insistence on meeting in the evening, all of it clicked into place with horrifying clarity. She was still standing frozen by the bookshelf when she heard the sound of a key in the lock. The door opened and Grigor stepped inside. He stopped when he saw her, his eyes going to the bookshelf and then back to her face. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. "You weren't supposed to find that," he said finally. Amelia's voice came out steadier than she felt. "What are you?" "I think you've already guessed." "That's impossible. Vampires aren't real." Grigor closed the door behind him, moving into the apartment with that same fluid grace she'd noticed before. In the darkness, his white hair seemed to glow slightly, and his eyes caught the ambient light from the window like an animal's. "I could lie to you," he said. "Tell you it's fiction, that you're tired and imagining things. But you're too intelligent for that, and you deserve better than more deception in your life." He stopped several feet away from her, keeping his distance. "Yes, Miss Wright, I am what you think I am. And this apartment, this building, the entire district surrounding it is under my family's protection. It's one of many such places scattered throughout the city, havens where humans can live safely without knowing what guards their streets." Amelia's mind reeled. "This is crazy. I'm going crazy." "You're not." Grigor's voice was gentle now, almost sad. "You're confronting a truth that most humans never have to face. The world is larger and stranger than your species generally knows. My kind has lived alongside yours for millennia, hidden in plain sight, bound by laws and protocols that keep both our peoples safe." "Safe!" The word came out bitter. "You're predators. You drink blood." "We do," he acknowledged. "But there are rules, laws older than any human government that govern how we feed. Consent is paramount. No deaths, no turning humans without their explicit understanding and agreement. Those who break these laws face consequences far harsher than your legal system could devise." Amelia thought about running, grabbing Sophie and fleeing into the night. But where would she go? Back to the car, back to the road, back to running with Derek somewhere behind them. At least here she knew what the danger was, even if that danger wore a handsome face and spoke with impossible courtesy. "Why did you bring us here?" she asked. "If you're what you say you are, why help us at all?" Grigor moved to the couch, settling into it with a sigh that seemed too human for what he claimed to be. "Because I am what I say I am, and because that comes with responsibilities. I am not merely a vampire, Miss Wright. I am the king of the Eastern Court, ruler of all vampires from the Atlantic to the Mississippi. This city is my seat of power, and those who live under my protection are mine to defend." "I didn't ask for your protection." "No," he agreed, "but you needed it nonetheless. And when I saw your application, when I learned what you were running from, and how desperately you needed safety, I couldn't ignore it." His eyes met hers, and there was something raw in them, something almost vulnerable. "I know what it's like to be hunted. I know what it's like to fear for those you love. I have the power to help you. How could I not? Amelia sank into a chair across from him, her legs suddenly unsteady. Derek, if he finds us, he won't, Grigor said firmly. And if he does, he'll regret it. I've already placed watchers on him, vampires loyal to me who will track his movements. If he comes anywhere near this city, I'll know about it before he crosses the border. You have my word, Miss Wright. While you remain under my protection, neither you nor your daughter will come to harm. It should have sounded like a threat, this powerful creature claiming ownership over her safety. Instead, it sounded like a promise, and Amelia found herself wanting desperately to believe it. What do you want from me in return? She asked quietly. There's always a price. Grigor was silent for a long moment, his expression unreadable. I want you to live, he said finally. I want you to raise your daughter in peace, to build a life without fear. As for what I get from that, he trailed off, something flickering across his face. Perhaps the satisfaction of knowing I used my power for something good, perhaps simply the pleasure of your company, if you'll grant it. I've lived a long time, Miss Wright, centuries, and I've learned that the greatest luxury immortality can offer is the chance to make a genuine difference in someone's life. How long? Amelia asked. How old are you? I was born in 1347 in what is now Romania. I became what I am in 1365, when I was 18 years old and dying of the plague. A vampire found me, offered me a choice, death or transformation. I chose to live. His smile was bitter. Though it took me decades to understand what that choice truly meant, Amelia did the math in her head and felt dizzy. You're almost 700 years old. Yes. And in all that time, I've seen empires rise and fall, watched humanity evolve from feudal societies to this modern age of technology and instant communication. I've seen the best of your kind and the worst. Your ex-husband is far from the worst I've encountered, but he's dangerous enough to those he considers his property. Grigor's expression hardened. He will not touch you again. That much I swear. They talked through the rest of the night, Grigor answering her questions with a patience that surprised her. He explained the vampire courts, the hierarchy that governed his kind, the blood banks and willing donors that allowed modern vampires to feed without hunting. He told her about the laws that protected humans, the enforcers who punished rogue vampires, the delicate balance that kept their world hidden from hers. By the time the first hints of dawn began to lighten the sky, Amelia's head was spinning with information, but the fear had diminished, replaced by a strange sense of possibility. I should go, Grigor said, rising from the couch as the light grew stronger. The sun is rising, and while I won't burst into flames, daylight is uncomfortable, weakening. Will I see you again? Amelia asked, then felt foolish for the question. Of course she'd see him again. He owned the building, claimed to be protecting her. But Grigor smiled, and it transformed his face, making him look younger, more human. I'd like that very much, if you're willing. I don't know what I am, Amelia admitted, scared, confused, but also, I haven't felt this safe in years, even knowing what you are, or maybe because I know what you are, I feel like maybe we really can be safe here. You can, Grigor said softly. I promise you that, Amelia. May I call you Amelia? Yes, she said, and realized she wanted him to, wanted to hear her name in that careful, accented voice. And I'll see you tomorrow evening? Tomorrow evening, he confirmed. He moved toward the door, then paused. Your daughter, Sophie. She's welcome to play in the courtyard behind the building. It's secure, warded with protections. And there's a school 3 blocks from here, one of the best in the city. I can arrange enrollment if you'd like. You don't have to do all this. I want to. His eyes met hers one last time before he left. Sleep well, Amelia Wright. You're safe now. The door closed behind him, and Amelia stood alone in the apartment as morning light filled the space. She should feel terrified. She should be packing their bags and running. Instead, she felt something she hadn't felt in 5 years. Hope. The next 3 weeks fell into a routine that felt almost normal. Amelia enrolled Sophie in the school Grigor had recommended, found a job at a bookstore 2 blocks from their apartment that paid surprisingly well, and didn't ask too many questions about her work history. Grigor appeared every evening, at first staying for only an hour or two, but gradually spending more time with them. He was wonderful with Sophie, patient and gentle in a way that made Amelia's heart ache. He brought her picture books illustrated with fairy tales from centuries past, told her stories about castles and kingdoms that he'd actually seen, taught her to play chess with a carved wooden set that was probably worth more than everything Amelia owned. With Amelia, he was something else entirely. Attentive, intelligent, funny in a dry way that caught her off guard. They talked about everything and nothing, and she found herself looking forward to the sound of his knock on the door each evening, the way his face lit up when he saw her. She was falling for him, she realized one night as she watched him show Sophie how to draw a horse. It was foolish and dangerous, and probably a terrible idea, but she couldn't seem to stop it. He was a vampire, an ancient creature who'd lived dozens of human lifetimes, and she was a single mother running from an abusive ex. They had no business feeling anything for each other. But when Grigor looked at her over Sophie's head, his silver eyes warm and gentle, she knew he felt it too. "Tell me about your life before," she asked him one evening after Sophie had gone to bed. They were sitting on the couch together, not quite touching, but close enough that she could feel the coolness that radiated from him. What was it like, becoming what you are? Grigor was quiet for a long moment, staring at his hands. "Terrifying," he said finally. "I was 18, dying, and suddenly I was something else entirely. Stronger, faster, immortal, but also alone. The vampire who turned me, Constantine, he was my sire and my mentor, but also my jailer. I was bound to him by blood laws, compelled to obey. It took me a century to break free of that bond, to claim my own power." "Is he still alive?" "No. He died 300 years ago in a territorial dispute. I inherited his position, his court, his responsibilities." Grigor's expression was distant. "I've ruled the Eastern Court since then, maintained the peace, enforced the laws. It's a lonely existence, Amelia. Power isolates even as it protects. I have advisors, subjects, allies, but few I would call friends. Fewer still I would trust with anything that truly mattered." Amelia reached out without thinking, placing her hand over his. His skin was cool to the touch, but not unpleasant, like marble warmed by moonlight. "That sounds incredibly sad." Grigor looked down at their joined hands, then up at her face. "It was," he said quietly, "until 3 weeks ago." The air between them seemed to thicken, charged with something Amelia didn't have words for. She should pull away, remember all the reasons this was a bad idea. Instead, she found herself leaning closer. "Grigor!" The window exploded inward in a shower of glass. Amelia screamed as Grigor threw himself between her and the broken window, his body suddenly faster and more dangerous than she'd ever seen. A figure landed in the room, a man with the same pale skin and white hair as Grigor, dressed in black and bearing a long, wicked-looking blade. "Your Majesty," the stranger said, his voice mocking, "how domestic you've become." Grigor's stance shifted, became predatory. "Vasily, you violate my territory uninvited. Explain yourself before I remove your head." Vasily laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "I come bearing news from the Western Court. It seems your little pet human has an admirer, a human man, law enforcement, asking questions about vampire havens and protected territories. Apparently, his ex-wife disappeared, and he's very interested in finding her." Ice flooded through Amelia's veins. "Derek, he found me." "Not yet," Grigor said, his voice deadly calm. "Vasily, why does the Western Court know about this?" "Because the man approached one of ours, offered money for information about vampire safe houses in the eastern cities. Our king thought you'd want to know, especially given your recent interest in human affairs." Vasily's eyes found Amelia, and she saw hunger in them, something predatory and cold. "She must be something special for you to break centuries of isolation. Tell me, is she worth starting a war over?" Grigor moved faster than Amelia's eyes could follow. One moment he was standing in front of her. The next he had Vasily pinned against the wall, his hand around the other vampire's throat. "You will not touch her. You will not speak of her. And you will tell your king that if Derek Wright enters my territory, he'll die before he takes 3 steps past the border. Am I understood?" Vasily gurgled something that might have been agreement. Grigor released him, and the other vampire vanished back through the broken window with a speed that defied physics. "Mama?" Sophie's small voice came from the hallway. "What was that noise?" Amelia turned to see her daughter standing in the doorway, rubbing her eyes. She forced herself to move, to cross to Sophie and pick her up, even though her hands were shaking. "Just an accident, sweetheart. Everything's okay." Grigor was already moving, grabbing his phone and making calls in a language Amelia didn't recognize. When he hung up, his expression was grim. "I'm calling an emergency council," he said. "Every vampire in my territory needs to know that Derek Wright is a target. If he's found, he'll be brought to me. Alive if possible, but that's negotiable." "You can't kill him," Amelia said, even though part of her wanted exactly that. "He's a police officer. There will be investigations, questions." "Then I'll make it look like an accident," Grigor said coldly. "Or I'll turn him and bind him so thoroughly he'll beg for death. Either way, he won't hurt you again." The ruthlessness in his voice should have frightened her. Instead, it made her feel protected in a way she'd never experienced. This creature cared about her safety enough to destroy anyone who threatened it. It was terrifying and thrilling all at once. "What do we do now?" she asked. Grigor looked at her, then at Sophie in her arms, and something in his expression softened. "Now I keep you safe, both of you. The apartment is no longer secure. I'm taking you to my home, to the court itself. No one will dare attack you there." "Your home? You mean like a vampire castle?" A faint smile touched his lips despite the tension. "Something like that. Will you trust me, Amelia? Will you let me protect you the way you deserve?" She thought about Derek, about the monster who'd stalked their lives for so long, finally getting close enough to threaten their safety. She thought about Grigor, who'd shown them nothing but kindness and care. The choice wasn't difficult. "Yes," she said. "We'll come with you." Grigor's home turned out to be beneath the city itself, a sprawling complex carved from stone and earth and lit by crystals that glowed with their own light. Amelia carried Sophie through corridors that looked like they had been built centuries ago, past chambers filled with treasures and libraries, and rooms whose purposes she could only guess at. They arrived at a suite that was larger than any apartment Amelia had ever seen, with multiple bedrooms, a sitting room, and windows that looked out onto an underground garden somehow filled with flowering plants. "This is impossible," Amelia breathed, staring at the garden. "How is any of this possible?" "Magic," Grigor said simply. "Not in the fairy tale sense, but in the sense that my kind has had centuries to learn how to manipulate the natural world in ways humans haven't discovered yet. The garden is fed by artificial sunlight, calibrated to the exact wavelength plants need without being harmful to vampires. The crystals are phosphorescent minerals mined from deep caves and enhanced with chemical treatments. None of it is supernatural, merely advanced." Sophie had fallen asleep against Amelia's shoulder during the journey through the underground complex. Grigor showed her to a bedroom where she could put her daughter down, and Amelia tucked Sophie into bed with a gentleness that belied her racing heart. When she emerged, Grigor was standing by those impossible windows, staring out at the garden with an expression she couldn't read. "You've been alone here," she said quietly. "All this space, all this beauty, and you've been alone." "Not entirely alone. I have my court, my advisors, but yes, in the ways that matter, I've been alone for a very long time." He turned to face her. "Until you." Amelia crossed to him, drawn by something she couldn't name. "This is crazy. You know that, right? I'm human. You're a vampire king. I have a daughter and an ex-husband trying to kill me, and you have centuries of history and responsibilities I can't even begin to understand. This can't work." "Can't it?" Grigor reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and cupped her face with his cool hand. "I've lived 700 years, Amelia. I've seen empires fall and new worlds rise, and in all that time, I've never felt for anyone what I feel for you. If that's crazy, then I welcome the madness." She should be sensible. She should think of Sophie, of their safety, of all the reasons why falling in love with an immortal creature was the worst possible decision. Instead, she leaned into his touch and let herself feel, really feel, for the first time in years. "What do you feel?" she whispered. "Everything," Grigor said. and then he was kissing her, his lips cool and gentle against hers, and Amelia forgot about sense and safety and everything except the way he held her, like she was precious, like she was worth protecting, like she mattered. When they finally pulled apart, Amelia was breathless, and Grigor's eyes had darkened to the color of storm clouds. "Stay with me," he said, "not just tonight, but truly. Let me protect you and Sophie. Let me give you the life you deserve, safe from fear and violence. Let me love you the way I've wanted to since the moment I saw you standing in that hallway, so brave and so scared and so determined to protect your daughter." "I don't know how to do this," Amelia admitted. "I don't know how to be with someone like you, how to navigate your world." "Then we'll learn together." Grigor rested his forehead against hers. "I don't know how to be with a human, how to open my heart after centuries of keeping it locked away. But I want to try, Amelia. If you'll have me, if you'll take the risk, I want to try." She thought about all the times Derek had made her feel small and worthless, all the nights she'd cried alone while he raged. She thought about running across the country with nothing but hope and determination, and she thought about the way Grigor looked at her, like she was strong and beautiful and worth protecting. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I'll stay. We'll stay." The smile that lit Grigor's face was like sunrise breaking through clouds. He kissed her again, deeper this time, and Amelia let herself fall into it, let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, she'd found something real. They were interrupted by a knock on the door. Grigor pulled away reluctantly, his expression shifting back to the regal mask he wore with others. "Enter." A female vampire entered, her white hair braided in an intricate crown around her head, her clothes formal and ornate. "Your Majesty, we've had a development. The human, Derek Wright, has been spotted entering the city. He's armed and making threats at establishments near the eastern border." Grigor's entire demeanor changed, became dangerous. "How long ago?" 20 minutes. We have trackers on him, but he's moving fast, asking questions about vampire havens and your recent activities." The female vampire's eyes flicked to Amelia. "It seems he has connections to vampire hunters, or at least knows enough to be dangerous." Amelia's blood ran cold. "He's found us. After everything, he still found us." Grigor turned to her, his expression fierce. "He hasn't found you. He's found a city full of creatures far more dangerous than he is. Stay here with Sophie. Don't leave these rooms for any reason. I'll handle this." "No," Amelia grabbed his arm. "You can't just go kill him. That makes you a murderer, and it makes me complicit. He's come here to hurt you, to take you back to a life of fear and pain. I won't allow that." "Then don't kill him," Amelia said desperately. "Please, I know what he is, what he's done, but I can't have his death on my conscience. There has to be another way." Grigor studied her face for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Very well. I won't kill him. But I will ensure he can never threaten you again. Do I have your permission for that much?" It wasn't really a question, but Amelia appreciated that he asked. "Yes, just don't make me regret trusting you." "Never," Grigor promised. He kissed her forehead, then turned to the female vampire. "Gather the elite guard. We're going hunting." They left in a rush of movement and cold air, and Amelia was alone with her sleeping daughter in a vampire king's underground palace, waiting to find out if the monster from her past would finally be stopped, or if she'd just traded one kind of danger for another. She didn't have to wait long. Less than an hour later, Grigor returned, and he wasn't alone. Derek was with him, held between two massive vampire guards who dwarfed even his tall frame. Her ex-husband looked furious and terrified in equal measure, his face bruised and his hands bound behind his back. "Amelia," he shouted when he saw her, "what the hell is this? What kind of freaks have you gotten involved with?" Amelia stepped forward, and she was surprised to find that she wasn't afraid anymore. Derek looked smaller than she remembered, less imposing, or maybe she'd grown stronger. "The kind who protect people instead of hurting them," she said quietly. "You need to leave, Derek. Go back home. Forget you ever knew where I was. Live your life and let me live mine." Derek's expression twisted with rage. "You're my wife. Sophie is my daughter. You don't get to just run away and play house with these freaks. I'll have every cop in 3 states looking for you. I'll have child services take Sophie away. You'll do nothing," Grigor interrupted, his voice cutting through Derek's rant like a blade. Because if you speak of what you've seen here tonight, you'll be labeled insane. If you attempt to use your connections to harm Amelia or her daughter, those connections will mysteriously disappear. And if you ever come near them again, I will personally ensure that you spend the rest of your natural life wishing you had died instead." The temperature in the room seemed to drop as Grigor spoke. His eyes had shifted to something inhuman, glowing faintly in the dim light, and his fangs were visible when he spoke. Derek tried to pull away from the guards holding him, but they were immovable as stone. "You're insane," Derek spat. "All of you. You can't just kidnap a police officer and expect there to be no consequences." "Can I?" Grigor smiled, and it was a terrible thing to see. "I think you'll find that I can do quite a bit. Your superiors will receive evidence of your abuse, your stalking, your violations of Amelia's restraining orders, video evidence, witness statements, all meticulously documented. By this time tomorrow, you'll be suspended pending investigation. By the end of the week, you'll be arrested, and Amelia will finally have the protection she should have had all along." "That's not possible. I covered my tracks. You underestimated what my people can uncover when motivated." Grigor gestured, and one of the guards produced a phone, holding it up so Derek could see the screen. Amelia couldn't see what was displayed, but Derek's face went white. "That's right. We have everything, every text message you thought you'd deleted, every threatening voicemail, every time you violated the restraining order, every time you used your badge to track her movements. All of it." Derek looked at Amelia, and for the first time since she'd known him, she saw real fear in his eyes. "Amelia, please. We can work this out. I'll get help. I'll change. Just don't let them do this." She should feel something, she thought. Triumph or satisfaction or even pity. Instead, she felt nothing but a vast relief, like a weight she'd carried for years had finally been lifted. "I gave you chances," she said quietly. "So many chances. You hurt me, you scared our daughter, you made me afraid to exist in my own life. I'm done, Derek. You don't get to hurt us anymore." Grigor nodded to the guards. "Take him to the surface. Drop him at the police station with the evidence. Let human justice take its course." As they dragged Derek away, still protesting and threatening, Amelia felt her knees start to buckle. Grigor was there instantly, catching her, holding her steady. "It's over," he said softly. "You're safe now. Both of you." Amelia buried her face in his chest and let herself cry, great heaving sobs of relief and release. Grigor held her through it all, his cool hands gentle on her back, his voice murmuring reassurances she couldn't quite hear over her own tears. When she finally pulled back, wiping her eyes, she found him watching her with such tenderness that it made her breath catch. "I love you," she said, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. "I know it's too soon and probably crazy, but I love you, Grigor Salvatore. Thank you for saving us." Grigor's expression transformed, joy and wonder chasing across his features. "I love you too, Amelia Wright. I have from the moment you walked past me into that apartment, so fierce and protective and beautiful. And I will spend however many years you'll give me, proving that you can trust me with your heart." He kissed her then, deep and passionate, and Amelia kissed him back with everything she had. They stood there in the underground palace, human and vampire, single mother and ancient king. And somehow, it felt right. It felt like coming home. The next weeks blurred together in a haze of happiness Amelia had never thought she'd experience. Derek was arrested. The evidence Grigor's people had gathered was overwhelming, and Amelia received notice that her restraining order had been upgraded with additional protections. More than that, Derek was being investigated for multiple counts of abuse and stalking, not just against her, but against previous partners he'd terrorized. Sophie thrived in their new life, attending the school Grigor had recommended and making friends with the easy adaptability of childhood. She adored Grigor, called him Mr. G, and demanded he read her bedtime stories every night he visited. And he visited every night. Grigor would appear at sunset, spending his evenings with them, teaching Sophie to draw or playing elaborate games of make-believe. With Amelia, he was attentive and patient, courting her with a formality that might have seemed old-fashioned if it hadn't been so sweet. He brought her flowers that bloomed only in darkness, took her to underground galleries where vampire artists displayed works spanning centuries, showed her the hidden beauty of his world. And when he kissed her, which was often, It was with a reverence that made her feel cherished in ways she'd never experienced. "I need to tell you something," Grigor said one evening as they sat together in the garden beneath his palace. Sophie was asleep upstairs, and the flowering plants around them filled the air with perfume. "Something about vampire bonds and what it means if we continue this." Amelia tensed slightly. "That sounds serious." "It is." Grigor took her hands in his silver eyes steady on hers. "When vampires form attachments to humans, truly deep attachments, it creates a bond that's more than emotional. It's almost physical, a pull that connects us. If we continue, if this becomes what I hope it will become, that bond will form whether we intend it or not." "What does that mean practically?" "It means I'll always know where you are, will feel if you're in danger or distress. It means my protection extends to you in ways that go beyond mere physical guarding. And it means—" He hesitated, something like vulnerability crossing his face. "It means I'll be bound to you until death, yours or mine. Vampire bonds don't break, Amelia. They're forever, in the most literal sense." Amelia processed this, turning it over in her mind. "And if I die, being human, what happens to you?" "I continue," Grigor said softly. "But part of me would die with you. It's the price we pay for loving mortals, the knowledge that we'll outlive you by centuries. I won't lie and say it doesn't terrify me, but the alternative, living without knowing you, without loving you, terrifies me more." "There's no way to make me like you?" Amelia asked. "To turn me, I mean." Grigor's grip on her hands tightened. "There is. But it's not a decision to make lightly, and it's not one I'd ever pressure you toward. Becoming a vampire means giving up sunlight, giving up mortality, changing in ways that are fundamental and irreversible. It also means potentially living apart from Sophie, watching her grow old while you remain frozen." "But if I stayed human, I'd have to leave her eventually anyway," Amelia pointed out. "Death comes for all of us." "Yes, but natural death, death that comes at the end of a full life, is different from choosing to walk away from humanity entirely. I need you to understand what you'd be giving up, Amelia. I need you to be certain." She thought about it, really thought about it. About growing old while Grigor stayed forever young, about leaving Sophie alone, about all the ordinary human experiences she'd miss. But she also thought about the life they could build together, the safety and love and possibility. "I'm not ready to decide that now," she said finally. "But I'm not saying no either. Can we take it slow? See where this goes naturally?" Relief flooded Grigor's face. "Of course. Whatever you need, whatever timeline feels right to you. I'm not going anywhere." They sat together in comfortable silence for a while, and Amelia found herself thinking about the future, about all the possibilities stretching before them. It wasn't the life she'd imagined, but maybe it was better. "Tell me about the court," she said eventually. "About the people here, the politics. If I'm going to be part of your life, I should understand your world." Grigor smiled. "Where do I begin?" He told her about the Council of Elders who advised him, vampires who'd lived even longer than he had and carried memories of ages Amelia had only read about in history books. He explained the territorial divisions, the way different courts governed different regions, and how they negotiated trade and treaties like nations unto themselves. He spoke of the enforcers who upheld their laws, the diplomats who dealt with the rare humans who knew their secret, the scholars who preserved their history and culture. It was fascinating and overwhelming in equal measure, a hidden world existing alongside the mundane reality Amelia had always known. And through it all, Grigor made it clear that she was welcome in that world, that he wanted her there not as an outsider but as someone who belonged. "The council wants to meet you," he said finally, watching her face carefully. "They've been asking since the night I brought you here. You don't have to, not if it makes you uncomfortable, but—" "I'd like to," Amelia interrupted. "If I'm going to be in your life, they should know me, and I should know them." Grigor's face lit up. "Tomorrow evening, then. I'll arrange it." The council meeting was nothing like Amelia had imagined. She'd pictured something formal and intimidating, ancient vampires judging her from positions of power. Instead, it was almost casual, held in a comfortable chamber with the 7 council members arranged in a loose semicircle. They were all impossibly old, Grigor had told her, ranging from 800 to over 1,000 years. But they greeted her warmly, asking about Sophie and her adjustment to the city, discussing books and art with an easy familiarity that put her at ease. "You've changed our king," one of them said, a woman named Serafina who'd apparently known Grigor since he was newly turned. "In 700 years, I've never seen him so happy." "He's changed me too," Amelia admitted, "given me and my daughter a life I never thought we could have." "And yet you remain human," another council member observed, an ancient vampire named Marcellus. "Does that concern you, the differences between you?" Amelia met his gaze steadily. "Of course it concerns me. I'd be a fool if it didn't. But I love him, and I believe he loves me. We'll figure out the rest as we go." Marcellus smiled, showing fangs. "A diplomatic answer. Grigor has chosen well." They talked for over an hour, the council asking questions that were probing but never intrusive, clearly trying to understand who she was and what she meant to their king. By the end, Amelia felt like she'd passed some invisible test, though she wasn't entirely sure what it had been. "They liked you," Grigor said afterward, walking her back to their chambers. "Serafina said you had fire, and Marcellus called you refreshingly direct, which from him is high praise." "They love you," Amelia observed. "It's obvious. They want you to be happy. They've watched me carry the weight of leadership alone for centuries. I think they're relieved to see me finally share that burden with someone." They reached the chambers, and Grigor pulled her close, his arms wrapping around her waist. "Move in with me properly," he said. "Not just staying here for safety, but truly living here. Make this your home, yours and Sophie's. Let me be part of your everyday life, not just your evenings." Amelia's heart swelled. "Yes," she said simply. "Yes, we'll stay. This already feels more like home than anywhere else ever has." Grigor kissed her, and it was slow and sweet and full of promise. When they finally pulled apart, Amelia saw Sophie standing in the doorway of her bedroom, rubbing her eyes sleepily. "Mama, are we staying here forever?" Amelia looked at Grigor, saw the hope and love in his ancient eyes, and made her decision. "Yes, sweetheart, we're staying here forever." Sophie smiled, still half asleep. "Good. I like it here. I like Mr. G." "I like Mr. G too," Amelia said, and Grigor laughed, the sound rich and warm. They put Sophie back to bed together, Grigor telling her a story about a princess who lived in an underground castle and was guarded by a dragon who was actually very nice once you got to know him. Sophie fell asleep halfway through, her small hand wrapped around Grigor's cool fingers. Later, lying in bed with Grigor beside her, Amelia felt a peace she'd never experienced. The vampire king loved her. She loved him. They would face whatever challenges came together, and somehow that made even immortality seem manageable. "Are you happy?" Grigor whispered in the darkness. "Yes," Amelia said, "more than I ever thought possible." "Good." He pulled her closer, and Amelia felt the steady absence of a heartbeat in his chest, a reminder that he was something other than human. But his arms around her felt real, his love felt real, and that was enough. Months passed, and their life together settled into a rhythm that felt both extraordinary and wonderfully normal. Amelia continued working at the bookstore, though Grigor assured her she didn't need to. She liked the independence, liked having something that was hers apart from their relationship. Sophie thrived in school, making friends and bringing home artwork that Grigor displayed throughout their chambers with a pride that made Amelia's heart swell. The bond Grigor had spoken of formed gradually, a connection between them that grew stronger each day. Amelia could feel him now, even when they were apart, a cool presence at the back of her mind that was comforting rather than intrusive. And when danger threatened, when a rogue vampire tested the court's borders, or when some threat emerged from the human world, she knew instantly because the bond flared with Grigor's protective instincts. Derek's trial happened in the spring, nearly 6 months after they'd fled. Amelia gave her testimony via video conference, Grigor standing just off camera for support. Seeing her ex-husband on the screen, diminished and angry behind a defense table, Amelia felt nothing but relief that he could never hurt them again. He was convicted on multiple counts, sentenced to 15 years in prison. It was more than Amelia had dared hope for, justice delivered by a human system that had failed her for so long. When the verdict was read, she turned to Grigor and let him hold her while she cried tears of release and gratitude. "It's truly over now," he said softly. "You're free, Amelia, completely free." And she was. Free to live without fear, free to love without reservations, free to build the life she'd always wanted with a man who happened to be an ancient vampire king. It should have been impossible, but somehow it was the most natural thing in the world. One evening, as summer approached and Sophie's 4th birthday loomed, Amelia found herself standing in the underground garden again, thinking about time and choices and futures. Grigor found her there, as he always seemed to when she needed him. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "Forever," Amelia said. "What it means, what it costs, whether I'm brave enough to choose it." Grigor went still. "You're considering transformation." "I am." She turned in his arms to face him. "I've been thinking about it for months, weighing everything. And I realize that I don't want to grow old without you. I don't want to leave Sophie alone in the world, but I also don't want to leave you. If I became like you, I could have both. I could watch Sophie grow up, see her have children of her own, be there for her whole life, and then, after, I'd still have you." "It's not an easy existence," Grigor warned, though she could see hope burning in his eyes. "There will be challenges, things you can't foresee. The hunger, the sensitivity to sunlight, the weight of centuries." "I know," Amelia cupped his face in her hands. "I've thought about all of it, and I've decided that a difficult forever with you is better than an easy lifetime without you. If you'll have me, if you'll turn me, I want to become what you are. I want to be with you, truly with you, for as long as existence allows." Grigor's eyes went bright, almost luminous. "You're certain? There's no going back once it's done?" "I'm certain," Amelia kissed him softly. "I've never been more certain of anything. I love you, Grigor Salvatore. Make me yours in every way possible." He kissed her deeply, passionately, and when they pulled apart, both were breathless. "It will take time to prepare," he said. "The transformation is dangerous, requires specific conditions and careful monitoring, and we'll need to explain things to Sophie first, make sure she understands what's happening." "How long?" "A few weeks, maybe a month." Grigor rested his forehead against hers. "But once it's done, once you wake as one of us, I'll never let you go. You'll be my queen, Amelia, in title and in truth. You'll rule beside me, eternal and beloved." The thought should have terrified her. Instead, it filled her with anticipation. "Then let's begin." They told Sophie together, explaining as best they could what Amelia had decided. The little girl listened with wide eyes, asking questions that were surprisingly insightful for someone so young. "Will you still be my mama?" she asked finally. "Always," Amelia promised. "I'll always be your mama, sweetheart. This just means I'll be here longer, that I'll get to see you grow up and have babies of your own someday." "And Mr. G will be here too?" "Forever and always," Grigor confirmed. Sophie considered this, then nodded decisively. "Okay, that's good. I don't want you to go away." "Never," Amelia said, pulling her daughter close. "I'm never going away again." The preparations took 3 weeks, Grigor overseeing every detail with meticulous care. He explained the process to Amelia multiple times, making sure she understood what would happen. She would drink his blood first, creating the initial bond. Then, he would drain her nearly to death, her human body dying while the vampire blood transformed her from within. Finally, she would wake after 3 days, changed and immortal. It sounded horrifying when laid out so clinically. But Amelia trusted Grigor completely, trusted that he would keep her safe through the transformation, that he would be there when she woke. They chose the night of the summer solstice, the longest night of the year, a tradition among vampires for transformations. The council gathered to witness, and Sophie was taken to stay with Serafina, who promised to care for her until Amelia woke. "Are you afraid?" Grigor asked as they stood together in his private chambers, the moment finally upon them. "Terrified," Amelia admitted, "but also excited. Ready." Grigor kissed her gently, then more deeply, and when he pulled back, his fangs were visible. "I love you," he said. "In 700 years, I've never loved anyone the way I love you, and I'll spend eternity proving that to you. I love you too. Amelia tilted her neck, offering, "Make me yours, Grigor. Make me eternal." The bite was sharp but not painful, pleasure flooding through her as Grigor drank. She felt her blood flowing into him, felt the bond between them intensify until it was almost tangible. When he pulled back, his eyes were glowing, inhuman and beautiful. He bit his own wrist, offered it to her. "Drink," he commanded, and Amelia obeyed. His blood was strange, cold and copper-sweet, but she drank deeply, feeling it spread through her system like liquid ice. Power hummed in her veins, foreign and exhilarating. When she'd taken enough, Grigor gently pulled his wrist away and guided her to the bed. "This is the hard part," he said softly. "I'm going to drink again, and it will hurt. But I'll be right here, and when you wake, you'll be magnificent." Amelia nodded, unable to speak past her racing heart. Grigor lowered his mouth to her neck again, and this time when he drank, she felt herself weakening, her human body shutting down as he took more and more of her blood. Pain flared, sharp and bright, and she gasped. "Shh," Grigor murmured against her skin. "Just a little more, my love. You're so brave." Darkness crept in at the edges of her vision. Amelia's heartbeat slowed, became erratic. She tried to speak, to tell Grigor she loved him one more time, but the words wouldn't come. Then, there was nothing. Amelia woke to a world transformed. Every sense was sharper, clearer, more intense than she'd ever experienced. She could hear conversations happening rooms away, could smell blood and stone and the unique scents of individual vampires. And when she opened her eyes, the darkness around her was as clear as day. Grigor was beside her instantly, his face radiant with relief and joy. "Welcome back, my love. How do you feel?" Amelia sat up slowly, testing her new body. She felt powerful, alive in a way she'd never been as a human. The hunger was there, a low pull in her gut, but it was manageable. "I feel incredible," she said, then laughed at how her voice sounded, richer somehow, more resonant. "Is it always like this?" "The intensity fades somewhat with time, but yes, you're one of us now, Amelia, truly one of us." She looked at her hands, seeing them pale and perfect, any scars or imperfections erased by the transformation. Her hair, when Grigor handed her a mirror, had lightened to white blonde, not quite as pure white as his, but close. Her eyes were still her own color, but brighter, almost luminous. "I'm beautiful," she whispered, awed. "You were always beautiful," Grigor corrected. "Now you're eternal." He kissed her softly, and Amelia could feel the connection between them, the bond fully formed and unbreakable. "My queen, my love, my forever." Amelia kissed him back, and it was different now, both of them immortal and powerful, and bound by more than just emotion. When they finally pulled apart, she was smiling. "I want to see Sophie," she said. "I need her to know I'm all right." They brought Sophie in carefully, Serafina holding the little girl's hand and explaining that Mama looked a little different now, but was still the same person. Sophie approached cautiously, her small face serious. "Mama," she said tentatively. Amelia knelt down to her daughter's level, letting Sophie study her transformed features. "It's still me, sweetheart. I promise. I just look a little different now." Sophie reached out, touching Amelia's pale cheek. "You're pretty," she declared, "like a princess." Relief flooded through Amelia. "Thank you, baby. Are you okay with this? With me being different?" Sophie considered this with the gravity only children possess. "Will you still read me bedtime stories?" "Every single night." "And make me pancakes?" "As many as you want." "Then I'm okay with it." Sophie threw her arms around Amelia's neck, and Amelia held her daughter close, marveling at how she could now hear Sophie's heartbeat, smell the unique scent of her child. The hunger stirred slightly, but there was no desire there, only love and protectiveness. "I've got you," Amelia whispered. "Forever and always, I've got you." The next months were an adjustment period, as Amelia learned to navigate her new existence. Grigor taught her to hunt ethically, to feed from willing donors who understood what they were offering. He showed her how to move with vampire speed, how to sense others of their kind, how to shield her thoughts from intrusion. The council welcomed her formally, and Amelia found herself taking on responsibilities in the court, helping to mediate disputes and manage the complex politics of vampire society. She and Grigor were crowned together in a ceremony that was equal parts beautiful and surreal, ancient traditions mixed with modern sensibilities. Amelia wore a crown of silver and diamonds, stood beside Grigor before the assembled court, and swore oaths that bound her to their people for eternity. "Our queen," the crowd chanted, and Amelia felt the weight of it, the responsibility and the honor. But her favorite moments were still the quiet ones, the evenings when it was just her and Grigor and Sophie, playing games or reading stories or simply existing together as a family. Sophie adjusted with remarkable ease to having a vampire mother, treating it as just another interesting fact about their lives. Years passed, and Amelia watched her daughter grow with a joy, untainted by the knowledge that she would outlive her. Because she wouldn't, not really. She would be there for every milestone, every triumph and heartbreak, for Sophie's entire life and beyond. She would know her grandchildren and great-grandchildren, would be a constant presence through generations of her family. When Sophie was 15 and asking questions about her own potential transformation, Amelia and Grigor sat her down for a serious conversation. "It has to be your choice," Amelia said firmly. "No one can make it for you, and you need to be absolutely certain. Take your time, live your human life fully. If you decide later that you want to join us in immortality, we'll be here. But there's no rush, sweetheart, no pressure." Sophie nodded thoughtfully. "Did you ever regret it? Choosing this?" Amelia looked at Grigor, saw the love and devotion in his ancient eyes, felt the unbreakable bond between them. "Not for a single moment," she said honestly. "This life, this family, it's everything I never knew I needed. But it was right for me. You have to find what's right for you." "I will," Sophie promised. "But I think I probably will want it eventually. I like the idea of forever, of having time to do everything I want to do. And I like the idea of never losing you and Dad Grigor." Dad Grigor. Sophie had started calling him that a few years ago, and it never failed to make his face soften with emotion. He'd taken to fatherhood with unexpected grace, loving Sophie as completely as if she were his own blood. "Whatever you decide," Grigor said, "we'll be here, supporting you, protecting you, loving you, always." Sophie smiled, then bounded off to her room, her teenage energy filling the space even after she left. Amelia leaned against Grigor, feeling the contentment that came from knowing her daughter was safe and happy and loved. "We did good," she said softly. "We did extraordinarily," Grigor agreed, "though the credit is mostly yours. You're an exceptional mother, Amelia." "We're a team," Amelia corrected, "in everything." They stood together in their underground palace, vampire queen and vampire king, partners and lovers and co-parents. Outside their sanctuary, the world continued its endless cycle, but here in the spaces they'd carved out for themselves, time moved differently. They had forever, and they were spending it exactly as they had always wanted, together. Sophie eventually did choose transformation at 25, when she'd completed medical school and wanted to spend eternity healing people. The night she woke as a vampire, Amelia held her daughter and cried tears of joy that she could be there for this, that she could guide Sophie through immortality the way Grigor had guided her. Decades passed, then centuries. The world above changed, technology advancing in ways that sometimes amazed and sometimes horrified them. But the vampire courts adapted, evolving with the times while maintaining their ancient traditions. Amelia became one of the most respected queens in vampire history, known for her wisdom, compassion, and fierce protectiveness of both vampires and humans. She established protocols for protecting abuse victims, created sanctuaries throughout their territory, ensured that humans who needed safety always had places to turn. And through it all, Grigor was beside her, her partner in every sense. They ruled together, loved together, navigated the complexities of immortal existence together. The bond between them never weakened, only grew stronger with each passing year. On their 100th anniversary, Grigor took her back to the apartment where they'd first met, which he'd preserved exactly as it had been that night. "Do you remember?" he asked, standing in the doorway just as he had a century before. "A frightened single mother and an ancient vampire king?" "I remember thinking you were going to be the end of me," Amelia said, smiling at the memory. "Instead, you were my beginning." the start of everything good in my life. You saved me too, Grigor said seriously. I'd lived 700 years before I met you, but I wasn't truly alive. You taught me what it meant to love, to be vulnerable, to let someone into the places I'd kept locked away for centuries. You made me better, Amelia. You make me better every single day. Amelia crossed to him, took his face in her hands, and kissed him with all the love and passion that a century together hadn't diminished. I love you, she said, for this lifetime and all the ones to come. And I love you, Grigor responded. My queen, my salvation, my everything. They left the apartment hand in hand, walking out into a world that was vastly different from the one Amelia had fled into all those years ago. But some things never changed. The love between them, the family they'd built, the safety they'd created for those who needed it. Amelia looked up at the stars visible between the city buildings and thought about the impossible path that had led her here. She'd been running from a monster and found a different kind of monster entirely, one who'd chosen to be her protector instead of her predator. She'd been terrified and alone, and now she was powerful and cherished. What are you thinking? Grigor asked, following her gaze. That I'd do it all again, Amelia said. Every difficult moment, every scary decision, every risk. Because it led me to you, to this life, to our family. I'd do it all again in a heartbeat. Grigor pulled her close, and they stood together in the night that was theirs, surrounded by the city they protected and the people they loved. A single mother had fled her violent ex across the country, and a vampire king had stood waiting at her door. What had started as a chance encounter had become an epic love story, one that would echo through eternity. And they lived, truly lived, happily ever after.